Put on his camera here.
Nice. Lovely. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Good morning, Mr. Ramnarine. How are you this morning?
Good.
Fantastic.
All right, let's jump right into it. Your initial response to Minister Imbert's 10th budget presented on Monday.
Well, it was very long, and I think unnecessarily so. And I don't know why he decided to take up that amount of time for. But anyhow, my response is that I didn't see anything in the budget that addresses the burning issues in Trinidad and Tobago, which are the issues of our economic stagnation and our number one issue, which is the issue of our crime, our personal safety, our national security. I mean, if I was to do a quick ask around the country, do you think that Trinidad and Tobago's crime situation will improve in 12 months? Do you think our forex availability, your ability to get 500 US from the bank, will improve in 12 months? Do you think that the state of the amount of jobs available to qualify young people will improve? And I think the answers to all these questions would be no.
Well, you made a statement that the economy is stagnated, and the Minister of Finance had a different perspective. The Minister of Finance said that in 2022, the economy grew by 1.5%, 23, 1.3%, and 2024, 1.9%.
Right. So let's take up in the 1.3% in 2023. I have a bit of a knack for granularity, and I follow the GDP data very closely. For the first 3 quarters of 2023, the CSO reported 0% growth. So I was very surprised to see the minister report 1.3% growth in 2023, which would have meant that you had, about 6% growth in the fourth quarter of 2023 to achieve 1.3% throughout the entire year if you had 0 for the first 9 months. So I went into the review of the economy. I think it's either page 193 or 194. I think it's 194, page 194 of the review of the economy. And I looked at that 1.3% very carefully, and I saw that there was a superscript on the year 2023, not a subscript, a superscript. And that referred to the source of that 1.3%. The source of that 1.3% is not the Central Statistical Office. It is the Ministry of Finance. That, therefore, is a number that is not coming from the authoritative source of economic data in Trinidad and Tobago, which is the CSO. It is coming from the Ministry of Finance. And I want to make that a very important point here this morning, right? That the authority for economic data is the CSO, not the Ministry of Finance. But in the page 194 of the review of the economy, that 1.3%, and I don't know how the Ministry of Finance came up with that.
I'm going to ask, are you discounting that figure?
I'm just telling you what the facts are.
No, so I'm asking you if you say that came from the Ministry of Finance.
I find it
very
surprising. I find that 1.3% very mysterious, and I hope the opposition goes into and the independent bench. I hope that they go into ask the minister how he arrived at 1.3%.
And what about the 1.9 he's reported for the 2024 so far?
2024, I think that too is Ministry of Finance data. So I would wait for the CSO poll to opine. And again, the CSO ought to have by now the 2023 entire GDP record. They only have the first 3 quarters of the year. So again, I'm calling on the CSO this morning. If anybody's listening, WhatsApp your friends in the CSO and say Kevin Ramnarine is calling out the CSO this morning, the independent authority that it is, to come and explain these numbers to the public, or update the website. Because in Jamaica, and I'm sorry to compare us to our CARICOM sister, in Jamaica, GDP reporting is very timely. So therefore, this narrative of 3 consecutive years of economic growth is a narrative coming from the Ministry of Finance. In the fourth quarter of 2023, I saw nothing in the energy data that would speak to growth. In fact, I saw a significant 13% decline in oil production in that quarter, a 2% decline in gas production. So that 1.3% needs to be interrogated. As I said, in
Mr. Ramnarine,
the economy, it's not a CSO number.
Mr. Ramnarine, are you suggesting then, based on what you said, and in response to Paul, you said that what you read out are in fact artifacts? Are you saying then that the Minister of Finance was not being factual in his statement in the budget?
I don't understand the logic of your sentence, of your statement. Anyhow,
well, it's a question. It's not a statement. It's a question.
Well, I'm saying he was being
because you said,
right?
So you're saying that he was not factual.
Well, there's, facts are subjective things, right? So, I mean, I could tell you right now, I think the Sawa River looks brown. And Steve Kahn will drive past the Sawa River and tell you it looks green.
I think you're comparing, Mr. Ramnarine, with the greatest of respect, apples to oranges. I think Wendell is asking you, what your statement is that you're questioning the source of the minister's.
Well, I'm saying that it ought to have been a CSO number.
Right. So you're questioning the source.
So I would wait for the CSO to come out with what that number is. But I mean, everybody is the evidence is pretty much around us that the economy is not in any sort of dynamic, state, that, there is a sort of stagnation in the country. That is underpinned, of course, by the sector, by the energy sector's performance and so on. Right. So,
Mr. Ramnarine, another question that I want to ask, because I hear this a lot of times from people who are opposed one way or the other. They say that this wasn't addressed, and earlier on you said that crime wasn't addressed and situations of the economy wasn't addressed by the Minister of Finance. If you had the opportunity to do that, how would you have addressed it? How would you have addressed crime in the budget and the economy in the budget?
You asked me a very broad question. First of all, I'm not an expert in crime, so I would not have addressed the issue of crime in the parliament. But my view is that clearly from the evidence, from the data, we are headed to the highest murder rate in 2024. Projections that I have seen, because, you could do simple forecasting, we are probably going to end the year at 646 murders, which is, unacceptable for a small country like Trinidad and Tobago. I mean, if I was to use my, my experience and managerial knowledge and so on, I mean, it's an issue of course, resource allocation. I think that, yes, I think the police need transport. The police needs to be mobile and so on. But the issue with 2,000 vehicles, which is, I'm fine with the 2,000 vehicles, but you all know what the issue with the 2,000 vehicles is. As I told somebody, in 5 years' time, you know what will happen to those 2,000 vehicles? They will all be in some yard somewhere in Silots or something like that, right? So
but I am of that same opinion concerning the vehicles, and I would have said so this morning.
The other issue, of course, is the issue of border protection, which incidentally is a major political issue in the United States. I don't know if you all looked at the VP debate last night, but it's a major issue. And I don't think that issue ever got the attention that it deserved in Trinidad and Tobago. We had a virtual invasion of this country, over the last 5 or 6 years. I mean, the evidence of that is all around. I'm not xenophobic or speaking against the Venezuelans or anything like that. And many of them are productive and hardworking. But it did speak to the issue of the porosity of the borders. And then there's the issue too of the porosity of the borders as it relates to the guns. Of course, we produce no guns here, but guns are, ubiquitous in this country among the criminal element. We saw. But
you're talking about border management, and you said you didn't see the issues related to security addressed, but the minister did say that they were going to be purchased of 4 patrol launches, 8 high-speed.
Well, again, the issue is, the maintenance of those vehicles, those vessels.
Yeah, and that's an issue, yes. But you say he didn't address it, and that's not accurate, Mr. Ramnarine. He did address it. The maintenance of it is an issue, but he did mention that. So how can you reconcile those? I guess
I didn't listen to the whole 5.5 hours. Already, some people have.
But you didn't listen to the 5.5 hours, but you're making definitive statements about he didn't address crime and national security and border control.
No, I said that I didn't see anything in the budget that preferred a solution. I didn't say he did not address it. You running away this morning, man.
I am not running away this morning.
But Mr. Ramnarine, which is why I asked the question. Well, it's entirely up to you. But your point this morning you made, and I'm emphasizing it, that what Paul just said. You said that you did not see crime and the economy addressed in the budget. My question to you is, how would you have addressed it if you had an opportunity to?
Well, I think with regard to the economy, we have had, I think I've lost track of the figures. There's so many figures now. Well, let me bring up my figures here, since you all like facts. Since you all want some data, right? We have the country's real GDP contracted by about 19% in the last 8 years. We've had oil production contracting by about 38, 39%. Gas production contracting by 35%. LNG production by 40%. So you could go on and on. So from my vantage point, you address the economy by, there are many things to do, but from what I understand, from my understanding, my expertise, I would address the production of natural gas and the production of oil. Those to me are two of the critical issues that have to be addressed. The Prime Minister did say a few weeks ago that we have 2 or 3 years of decline to continue with natural gas production. And I had said that 2 years ago. I think I pulled up the EZP article and shared it on Facebook and so on. So to address the economy fundamentally, I would address the ease of doing business to aid the manufacturing sector in terms of increasing its productive capacity. I would address the energy sector's performance and production and so on. So those are some of the things. I don't know if you want me to speak for 5.5 hours, but there are lots of things that you could speak about. The issue of crime, of course, has a bearing on the economy. The issue of the deindustrialization of Trinidad and Tobago. We've had so many plant closure. We've had, the refinery is now 6 years in abeyance. I'd already see that being restarted. So those are some of the things that I would address. The whole issue of diversification, I would address. I think the way for us to go with regard to diversification is towards the maritime services sector. That's my personal point of view. It's a pretty studied point of view, and I think many agree with that. But those are some of the things that I would look at.
The issue of the energy sector is no secret, and you're right about that. The production levels have impacted significantly our revenue streams. The minister had to come back to the parliament in the 24 fiscal to revise his energy projections and increase the deficit. Based on that, what do you think about his projections for oil and gas prices? Because a lot of his the revenue projections are based on that. Although he did mention that
I think the prices are good. I think the price of oil that he uses is reasonable. It's a bit high. But I don't think it's far-fetched. I think the gas price is a reasonable assumption. The issue is really the production, because of course revenue is price multiplied by production. So the issue is the falling production will manifest itself in lower revenue. But the prices I think the oil was a bit on the high side. There is a lot of geopolitical instability in the world. But I don't see the price of oil getting higher than $75 a barrel. But he put it at 77, which is not far off.
I don't know if the manufacturing numbers are still coupled with manufacturing in the energy sector. Could you say?
I'm not sure. There was that issue a couple of years ago, but I don't know if that has been rectified. But as far as, so for example, when you look at what we call the oil revenue in the budget, right? That is that does not contain the corporation tax from Point Lisas, from NGC, from Atlantic LNG. So what the energy sector contributes to revenue is actually a lot more than what is reported in the budget. Actually, central bank reporting captures that as energy revenue.
And regarding what you mentioned, the ease of doing business, the minister praised, in his words, Minister Gopi Schoon, for what he said she did with the manufacturing sector, the non-oil sector. Do you agree with that perspective?
I think I want to be very fair this morning. Paula Gopi Schoon is somebody I know from, we sat in Parliament together. I think that she's been doing a very reasonable and good job with the manufacturing sector. I mean, I'm not all critical of the government. I think she has, I mean, I speak to people in the manufacturing sector, and they are very happy with the support they have gotten from her. I think that there is a lot more that could be done. There's always more that could be done with ease of doing business. For example, and this is not necessarily related to ease of doing business, but the property tax. I mean, we all should be able to pay the property tax online. And one would think that when the commercial property tax comes around, you could have, businessmen could pay property tax online. I think as much as possible that we could move things to online payment, it helps. But I think there's a lot more to do. The VAT refunds, of course, is an issue which continues to bear down on the business community. But I think the manufacturing sector is getting the support that they need, but a lot more to be done, of course.
What's going to be the impact of that escalating conflict between Israel and now Iran?
I think it's going to escalate. I think it's really going to. I mean, Israel is fighting about 4 different enemies at the same time. They're bombing Syria, they're bombing Lebanon, they're bombing Hamas, they're bombing, they're probably going to retaliate on Iran, they're bombing the Houthis and so on. So I think that conflict is going to escalate. It's not really having I'm not seeing it having the impact on oil prices. There was a small impact of a few dollars a few days ago. But the issue with the global oil price is really the fact that the United States continues to outperform everybody in terms of oil production, 1. And 2, the Chinese economy continues to be, performing below expectations. So China has not really ever recovered from its very, stringent lockdowns during the COVID period. So that the drag on the Chinese economy is continuing to affect oil demand. And of course, as I just said, the Americans are, drill baby drill. I think that summarizes the energy policy of one presidential candidate.
Do you think the announced moves to renewables, the minister spoke about the photovoltaic initiatives, is it Brecon Castle solar field, and how much impact do you think that will have on diversifying our energy consumption needs in the country?
I don't know. I mean, yeah. I don't know if I am not aware of where that project is. I think it's in train. It's happening. But I'm not sure when that is going to be completed. It seems to be running pretty late. But it is, the whole issue of solar energy in Trinidad is something to be debated. I mean, it's something we support, but I mean, the climate is changing, right? We have 8.5 months, is it now, of rain in Trinidad, and that's overcast skies, and then there's no sun at night and so on. So I think wind is actually a more reliable solution because we have no shortage of wind on the East Coast. But of course, technical analysis, it doesn't happen like that. You would have to do a proper wind study and so on. So I think we'll wait to hear from the Ministry of Energy as to what is the outlook for that solar farm in, is it Brechin Castle? Yes.
Are there other ways, because I know a lot of emphasis is being placed by this government on that 2-year timeline to get gas out of Dragon. Are there other ways that have not been explored effectively to increase gas production trying to Tobago, or are fields that mature that it's almost impossible to do so without, I guess, striking more?
I think the Calypso project is really a great hope for Trinidad and Tobago, and it's our gas. It's within our borders. The issue is that it's very economically challenging to make that fly, because it's 3.5 trillion cubic feet of gas per day, which if that was in shallow water, that would have been an amazing project economically, but that gas is in deep water. It's in over 1,000 meters of water to the northeast of Tobago. So that makes it a lot more expensive, one, and two, challenging from an engineering point of view. So I don't know, again, I don't know when that is going to materialize. I know there have been some positive noises out of Woodside with regard to, they're doing some pre-feasibility works and so on. But I think that is a project which, if I was back in the ministry, in fact, that project actually started, its genesis is with me in the Ministry of Energy, because that block was awarded by me in 2013. I think that is something that I would pursue. Having said that, I am not against pursuing gas from Venezuela. In fact, I think we have to pursue gas from wherever we could get gas. And I think that, but I think that we have to accept the reality that Venezuela is what it is. And it's an uncertain situation when it comes to doing anything with them. Because you know why? The geopolitical risk, the domestic political risk in that country is very high. So that's where we find ourselves. With regard to the Prime Minister's statement, the Prime Minister is, is correct. He said it as he saw it, because he has seen it, because he'll be privy to more information than most people, or, than certainly the man on the street. But I don't think that the relief will come in 2027. I think the improvement in the gas supply will come in 2028. The reason being that Manatee will come on around September 2027, which doesn't give it a full year of production until 2028. And when it does, it really will get us back to 2022 levels of production. So important project, a project that has to happen, a national priority, but it's not going to, be the big savior that we think it would be, but an important project.
Interesting. You mentioned, of course, the bright spot. You think you agreed with the manufacturing sector making some progress. You had some concerns about crime. What are your do you have concerns? Because a lot of people have spoken about implementation deficits in this country, and how you think we can deal with those implementation deficits.
Well, as you know, the public service is the main implementer, right? The implementer of public policy, of government policy, and so on. Public service reform has been, around. That term has been bandied around since the days of Gordon Draper. In my respectful view, I've been out of government 9 years now. I think the public service has actually declined in the last 9 years, Paul.
I agree.
And I don't know if, I might get some licks for saying that. But there was a time in this country when the average citizen could have named permanent secretaries, who they were. We had some permanent secretaries who were household names in this country at one point in time. You remember those names? Frank Rampasad and, people like that. Trevor Bob Singh and so on, people like that. And that this is not to, diminish the current crop of permanent secretaries that we have. But I think what has happened in certain key ministries is that they have not been able to retain and also to attract the current talent. And the reason for that is that the salaries in the public service simply are out of step with the salaries in the private sector. So, for example, in the Ministry of Energy, I'm sure the Minister of Energy would tell you, if you ever speak to him, because I had the same experience, that the best and the brightest in the Ministry of Energy are very difficult to retain because they are in demand. So the decline in the public service has a lot to do with the loss of talent and the inability to attract the talent, because the public service does not pay what the private sector pays. We've also had, the systems in the public service. Of course, I want to address this whole issue of work from home. I think that we have to have a work from home policy. And I can tell you the upstream energy companies in Port of Spain already, if you visit some of these offices in Port of Spain, you walk in the office and you want to know where everybody is. Well, most of them working from home. So those companies have already implemented a work from home policy where people rotate, and, there are some people who simply can't work from home, right? Like technical people in industries and so on. But we have to look at this whole work from home policy for the public service. And again, utilizing the technology, Microsoft Teams. I mean, I know most people like to use Zoom because it's simpler, but Microsoft Teams, you can run entire organizations virtually.
Well, I think we went through a pandemic, and whatever little gains we would have made were not acted upon. And
so I don't know. Again, I don't know the ministry. We have a Ministry of Digital Transformation. I mean, I want to give them the benefit of the doubt that they are working on digital transformation. But certainly something like property tax payment should be online, right?
We had a long discussion on that. And
I could tell you, if TNTech could do it, if WASA could do it, if B-Mobile could do it, I don't see why the Board of Inland Revenue couldn't put that in place for. Well,
they say it's coming as of October, end of October. Mr. Ramnarine, thanks for being with us this morning. We appreciate your time.